Hey, I don't know if you want to record the pre. Your audio's not working.
It's all automatically recorded.
Oh, okay.
They set it up like that, and then they're gonna clip this part out of
Okay.
it
All
or
right, cool.
something, and you know, yeah. So let me give everybody who needs co-host. All right, so you co-host. I'll just give all of you Monica, just in case you need it, and Alexander. Hi, Alex. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see y'all.
Who else is on the panel? Sorry, is Heather on the panel too? Yeah, I can't remember.
No, it's Monica and Alexander and Teresa.
Oh, here's Teresa now. Okay. Is Michael? Mike.
Michael couldn't make it today. We found out.
Oh
He
no,
joined.
here he is. So
Oh, okay. Well, good.
yeah, cool. Michael, I was saying you weren't going to make it, but thank you for coming, man.
Um, I ended up rearranging the schedule for my French 101 class, and I've got my TA doing an exam review. And she's also my capstone student, and she very graciously agreed to switch that to tomorrow. So there's a panel I'm going to miss tomorrow morning. But anyway, long story short, too late. I'm here.
Well, we're glad to have you.
No, I'm that last one. I was working on my annual review materials and lost track of time and missed the first 5 minutes. And I'm really sad that I did because that is a great project. And right now, my OER is a Google Doc. And so I'm like, oh my God, they set the bar way too high for me.
Well,
But
we'll certainly have the opportunity to talk about some of that stuff actually in the panel, right? Because it's one of our topics. Welcome, everyone. We still have a couple of minutes before we're going to get started. So thank you for joining us. And we're excited to have a bit of a faculty OER adoption and development conversation here. But like I said, about 2 more minutes and then we'll get started.
Morning, everyone.
morning, Teresa, how are you?
Good.
Are you also just counting down the days until spring break?
Yes, kind of. But our global campus doesn't really have a spring break per
Oh,
se.
that's right, your global campus. Oh,
But I am going on spring break with my daughter. So we're going to go to Montreal and Quebec City. So that'll be fun.
ouh. Donc, vous allez parler un peu français?
Um, uh, Jean Paul. And then how do I say daughter in French? She speaks it fluently.
Ma fille.
My fille,
Ah, voilà.
fluently.
Ah, couramment. Très bien.
Oh, that's right. Michael, you teach French. Oh my
I
gosh.
do.
I will
Yeah.
have to email you. You probably know all the places we should go. I'll email you.
I've never been to Quebec City. I want to. I've heard it's gorgeous, but Montreal, I have visited twice. Once in the middle of a huge snowstorm up past my knees, and
Wow.
another time in July. It is two very different cities, but oh, you're going to have a great time.
Thank you.
Definitely visit Le Château Frontenac. That's in Quebec.
Mhm.
Um, you're gonna eat good.
I heard that.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. And oh, they have a Harrods in
Hmm.
Montreal.
I didn't know that. I've been to the
Yes,
one. Yeah, I've been to one, but yeah, in London, but not. I'll have to look.
I got some really great tea. Herbal, not verbal.
Well, all right. That sounds fantastic. Very exciting. And I think it's time for us to get started because it's 10:51. We have the next hour here with a few, I guess, faculty experts on this panel, talking a little bit about their experiences and maybe providing, I don't know, reflection, but also hopefully providing some tips. And we'll get to that. So welcome everyone to the Inspiring Creative Change Faculty OER panel. My name is Matthew Bloom. I'm English faculty at Scottsdale Community College, which is part of the Maricopa Community College District. I'm also the past president of the OER Arizona Board of Cultivators, and I'm super excited to be here. My job on this panel is to just ask questions and maybe try to keep conversation rolling if and when things slow, but I doubt that's going to happen because as you will see, we have a lot of very dynamic and knowledgeable folks on this panel. So I'm going to go ahead and just say we welcome to Alexander Greengaard. He's an instructor lecturer, ABECC / Applied Technologies at Pima Community College. We have Monica Ketchum-Cárdenas, who's professor of history and sociology at Arizona Western College. We have Michael Rulon, who's Associate Teaching Professor of French, Arabic, and World Cinema at Northern Arizona University. And we have Teresa Leary Handy, who is the Program Chair and Assistant Professor, the School of General Studies at the University of Arizona Global Campus. So welcome to all of our panelists. And the first thing that we're going to do is kind of go around one by one and let each of the panelists give a brief introduction to themselves and to some of their general work or specific work or experience with open. So I'm going to go ahead and start. We'll just do it alphabetically. We'll start with, actually, I don't even know if it's alphabetical anymore, but I'll just start with my list in the order that it's on my list, which is Alexander Greengaard first. So go ahead, Alex.
Howdy. Luck of the draw on that. So yeah, I'm Alex Greengaard, instructor lecturer, Pima Community College. I work with the adult ed program, which we call adult basic education for college and career. And I also teach adjunct in building and construction technologies under the applied technologies umbrella. My OER is called Open ELA, and it is a book for GED seekers. And I created it because I thought there was a really big need for something that could compete with Pearson materials. Pearson makes the GED and also owns the Kaplan book, and so has kind of a stranglehold on materials for students, and it's really, really tough to find good, free, beautiful materials. There's that kind of a triangle. You can pick one, and I wanted us to at least pick two, and develop something that would be good for students based on my experiences in the classroom and what the test actually looks like and what would be a good set of challenges to make it to that next level. Make it free and open, but also it's honestly very helpful for me to use in the classroom because using the book as a framework, it's really easy to get it into my D2L. It's really easy to get it to students. So it's made my life a lot easier, even though it took a good chunk of time to write the 40 chapters. My interest in OER is based on marginalized populations and access. And so the GED folks, people who are working towards completing their high school equivalency diplomas, these are people who are specifically marginalized, people who have specifically barriers to their education. And so having a free, open resource that I can even continue to make better and better, that'll offer appropriate challenges, and that's actually aligned to what they're actually moving towards, I think I just wanted the world to have that, and that was my primary motivation. And then it turned out it was a really good teaching tool and made my life a lot easier.
That sounds fantastic, and I'm sure that we'd like to hear more about the process of developing that and some of that maybe later Next on the list is Monica Ketchum-Cárdenas.
Hi, everyone. My name's Monica Ketchum-Cárdenas, and I'm a professor of history and sociology at Arizona Western College. I've been using OER in most of my classes for over a decade. I was like an early adopter of, some of the first history, textbooks that came out, and then I started searching for more resources. And I've also modified and created OER, including a History of Mexico textbook. And I also conducted my doctoral research on faculty attitudes at the community college towards adopting OER. And based on that, I found that one of the biggest barriers is just lack of training and lack of professional development. And so to that end, I developed some professional development around, getting started with OER. A few years ago, I served as department chair for social sciences, and we were really trying to get more faculty to adopt OER, especially in those very high enrollment classes. And so the keynote earlier, I was like, yes, this is what you do. You target, the top 10 or top 20 classes. And in social sciences, those included Psych 101 and Soc 101. And so what I did was just help to facilitate the adoption of those across those courses. And then we found that once faculty adopted, then they started to look for more and more ways to incorporate OER. And yeah, that's about it. I'm happy to share any other information if you want to pick my brain about things. And I'll end for now.
All right. Well, thank you, Monica. And then next is Michael.
Bonjour, marhaba. I am Michael Rulon. I currently only teach 3 subjects, but I have actually worn many, many hats at the 2 different institutions I've been at, everything from Asian studies to cinema studies to French and Arabic language, first-year seminar. I have been committed to lowering course material prices for students for a very long time. Unfortunately, most of the areas that I teach in don't have many, if any, OERs currently available. And the ones that are available have their good points and their deficiencies. I'm also a member of an OER committee at NAU led by the Honorable John Joseph Doherty. And we have been working on advocacy and also supporting faculty in adopting, adapting, and developing OER. And I did get a grant to develop my own OER for first-year French, which is designed to meet specific needs that I've seen at NAU. Besides the fact that we do have a large percentage of first-gen and low-income students, cost was a big motivation, but also we are a Hispanic serving institution, and I have noticed that French language materials are geared towards Anglophones, and I wanted to make it more user-friendly for Hispanohablantes. So I'm actually kind of writing 2 textbooks at once. But also I'm finding that a lot of college students have absolutely no background in the basics of language. So my textbook is also teaching them things like, what is a noun? What is a verb? What is sentence structure? And finally, students aren't learning effective learning strategies. And so I'm building those into my textbook so that students are forced to engage with the material in a way that's going to actually promote long-term learning. And that is the current project I'm working on, and that's why I'm so caffeinated.
Well, thank you very much for sharing it. It sounds like quite a bit of work. And last but not least, Teresa.
And how do I follow Michael, right? So it's so good to be here. I'm Teresa Leary Handy with the University of Arizona Global Campus, and I am literally the newbie in this room in that I stumbled upon open educational resources when I was trying to figure out how to add materials, supplemental materials to the entry point course that I'm responsible for. So I'm the program chair for our entry point course, Gen 101, which is developing skills and strategies for success. And we have a great textbook with lots of OER embedded. However, our students needed those supplemental materials, and I couldn't find things that really said what I wanted them to say for our students specifically. And it was always branded with another school or another organization or someone's consulting work. And so I saw this as I'm like, oh wait, this could work. And so I wrote a proposal at we have something that was called University Fellows Program. And I wrote a proposal, got pulled together a cross-departmental team from Access and Wellness and from the Writing Center and associate faculty, full-time faculty. And we created these resources that we used in 17 courses with around 400 students. And the response was fantastic from our faculty and our students. And so now we're into phase two of a similar program with something with our OSIF now, a grant, same cross-departmental team, and we're really trying to embed even more resources into the course, but we're also spreading our wings to bring many more faculty into the fold. So in April, we're going to have the UAGC OER Day, where Matthew Bloom is going to be speaking to our faculty and really motivating them to use, and see, I think Michael and Alexander have spoken to what is really a big issue, which is it can feel gargantuan. It can feel really big if you're trying to like write a textbook. And so I tiptoed into the waters with supplemental resources. And that was a great way to do it because you had success early on and then you felt like you accomplished something. And that's how we're going to really encourage our faculty in our school to endorse and to bring into those materials into their courses. So UAGC is a global campus with students all over the world, and I want our materials to reflect their experiences, similar to what Michael and Alexander were saying, and just trying to figure out how to do that. OER was a fantastic entry point for us, and I'm excited to share more about how we're doing that, because in addition to the OER Day, we're having an OER Create Day where we're going to meet and we're going to encourage folks to figure out how they can remix, adapt, or create something in a safe space with their colleagues. So happy to share how we've done it, just kind of tiptoeing in and then and comparing that to how other people have started the process at their institution. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being here. So we actually asked all of the attendees to do a couple of polls upon entry, and one of them is just kind of the general experience. And so just so that we're kind of aware, it looks like a lot of folks are kind of in the middle. We have a lot of folks who have used OER a bit, not really created it, and then the second highest response was some experience. Not quite as many folks brand new and not quite as many folks extremely experienced. So that's kind of the composition of the folks in attendance. And the other thing that we asked was the question is in one word, and this helps to transition into our first kind of panelist question. In one word, what do you think most stands in your way to adopting or creating OER? And the words that came up, well, funny enough, one of the words is nothing. So somebody thought that there's nothing standing in your way, which is really fantastic. But the other answers, I think, will link up to some of the things that we had in mind to discuss today, which is understanding, maybe a lack of understanding about what the space is like. And then another word that came up was experience. And then the other word that came up was resources. And so we've already seen in with what a couple of our panelists have said that a couple of those things were kind of involved in their experiences getting started. But I'm going to just go ahead and open this up to the panel. And if you're in the audience, by the way, feel free to ask questions in the chat. We have some time, hopefully at the end, to address whatever questions you have. So feel free to utilize the chat to ask questions or make comments or whatever, and I'll try to monitor that. So anyway, to the panelists, the first question is, what are some barriers that you feel either you experience or some faculty experience when it comes to entry into open education? And how have you overcome those barriers?
I would love to start if if you don't mind, because I think experience is really big in our institution, which is why we're doing that elevating people and building competency with that event. But the experience in how do you like even how do you begin to conceptualize things? And so where do you start? Like where do you go and build this and where do you house it? So one of the things that OE Arizona does, which is great, is they offer these courses. And I think one is now, and Chelsea can correct me, but one is now actually like asynchronous, the OER fundamentals. And so when you are dealing with people who feel less experienced, building competency is the one thing that you can do to help them. And so using those resources that OER Arizona has that are free and available to you, and then going to events like this, an open education conference, there's an online version. That's like the Seminole Conference or the Grandfather Conference that everyone really finds that they learn a lot of information from. I went to that last year. So experience for me was the big piece, like, and then building the confidence to say, we can do this, and then building the confidence of the team. And so like I said, helping people. So we educated ourselves first. We went to the conferences, and then we also started with those supplemental resources. So we didn't feel like we had to create a textbook.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that too. I think a big barrier for someone who would be a creator is that it's daunting, and it feels like you're supposed to write a textbook and then make it open. And I think like everything else in the world, it can and should be chunked. And so I found that writing a chapter is a lot easier, but it wasn't called chapter when I wrote it. It was a lesson. And then I realized, oh, wow, my materials for this lesson are really nice. What if I build on that, build on that? And for me, having a place to store them that other people could access them gave me a little motivation to make it look a little nicer. And then over time, and also it was helpful because I just like using links. I don't like building and rebuilding in D2L time and time again. And y'all know we can't just copy it and move it over because you have to change all the dates and or it'll go away for inexplicable reasons. I just like having a little more granular control over stuff. So I sort of accidentally built an OER with all my lesson plans, and then all my materials were linkable for me. And I realized, oh, wait, everyone can click a link. So then I started just sharing that with the students and building it out, and it was suddenly a textbook. So it could be something that's integrated into your routine. I advocate for that sometimes, but I also know, and Chelsea knows this too, that this is good work and people would want to be paid for it. So it's a nice luxury at Pima to have an OER director and to have somebody who's thinking about that side of things. I might be unusual in that I wanted to do it anyway, but I don't know that everybody wants to do it anyway. I think we do need to pull in some money to pay faculty to create these resources. Certainly, Pearson's knocking on our doors, asking for us to contribute chapters to their textbooks. Why not? It's for me, being a student of punk rock, writing the same quality chapter and then making it free and open is my little message of how I feel about Pearson. It's my answer to Pearson, but I don't know if everybody else is going to see it that way. Y'all should be paid for your time. So it's tricky there. And then I want to mention this, we can touch on it more later, but I think another barrier to entry is I've got a Word document, but I don't know how to make it look like something. And I don't want to put my name on it until it looks like something. And so not everybody's also a graphic designer. And that's another thing. How do I even touch on that? How do I leverage tools that are going to make it look nice? And then even then, like some of those tools are going to be paid for tools. So am I going to spend my salary on it? Am I going to spend my time on it or not? And I don't know. It may be that we just have to tap into people's punk rock interior, because I think with college teachers, there's a lot of that. But I also think we need to find some funding.
Absolutely. And I agree with pretty much everything you said. And thank you, John, for providing that funding. Um, but I'd also like to touch on adopting and adapting, because I think the idea of writing an OER might be kind of "Nyeh" for people who have limited experience. And I will say that adopting and adapting is also a time-consuming process. And some of the courses I teach are multi-section courses, and you need buy-in from all of the faculty if you're going to switch to an OER. And OERs tend not to have all the ancillaries that publisher-provided textbooks have. So you're going to be creating your own test banks. You're going to be creating your own in-class activities. You're going to be supplementing a lot of things, um, and that can feel not quite as overwhelming as writing an OER, but it can certainly be a barrier when you're in a department where everyone feels like their workload is already at 138%. And John, I was actually looking at some of the discussions on the community board about AI. I have used AI a single time just to see if ChatGPT could be used to cheat in my film class. It writes lousy papers. But yeah, and I also think that leveraging the communities, not just within our own institutions, but we've all created tests, we've all created activities. And how much effort are we duplicating by not just reaching out and saying, hey, I need an activity for a first year class where we're working on indirect object pronouns. And I could have a dozen friends from grad school who are now spread out across the country email me 24 different activities. And I really do think that this sense of community that is building around OER is one of the biggest things that's going to help us overcome a lot of the obstacles we're talking about today.
I kind of feel lucky because being a history professor, there's a lot of stuff that's available when we're looking at primary sources and things like that. And there was a lot of work done to develop some decent open, textbooks in history, especially U.S. history. And I teach U.S. history, but I teach world history and history of Mexico and things like that. So sometimes I had to just, tap into my DIY punk rock ethos and just, sit down one summer and write a history of Mexico textbook for my class because there was really nothing there. But when I look at like some of the barriers, the biggest barrier I think is time, because especially when you're looking at those of us who teach at the community college, we're paid to teach, not to get release time to research, to develop, and things like that. And I've always taught a lot of classes, a lot of overload. And so just trying to dig in and find some time to work on it. People that I've talked to who are reluctant to, adopt, let alone adapt, but just to adopt OER. One of the things that they come back with is like, the aesthetics, right? Are the students going to take it seriously because it's not pretty? And also I've had some people say, you know what? I feel like I'm going backwards because now with all of the, course management systems, right, where you can get Pearson, for example, or Cengage, and the students can go in there and there's the exams and homework grading and things like that. Even if you're not using that, test banks, now you have to create your own, right? And so there's been some people that are like, oh, this is like going backwards. But to me, I always thought I want to have more control over what my course materials look like. And I was always frustrated with the fact that commercial textbooks often just didn't have the diversity that I was looking for in terms of content. And I was adding my own stuff anyway. So why not build a class around the lessons that I teach, and then kind of, with OER, a lot of times you are cobbling things together. And so that's kind of the way that I approach things. And there are some people that are like, I want to be compensated. I need more time, etc. And I appreciate that. For me, it was like, I'm not going to wait for somebody to pay me. I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to make it free for my students because, I teach at an institution like many of us do, where you have a huge percentage of students that are from lower socioeconomic groups that may not have, if they have to use Pearson or Cengage, they may not have stable internet connection at home. They may not, have the access, financially that they need in order to obtain course materials. And so for me, it was also this like social justice crusade that I was embarking on. But again, there's everybody's going to have their own set of barriers, but I think that the main ones are time and really trying to find those resources, especially if you're not in a discipline where there are already a lot of resources. And I really appreciate that when I've talked to people at my institution about, OER and try and help them find resources, and there's nothing there. It's like, you know what? If you don't have the time to create it, then, you have to give them some grace because it is a big thing to do. Those disciplines that have tons of resources, to me, I'm like, there's no excuse, right? That it's just like adopting a different textbook from a textbook company. You're just when you go to adopt or update your course materials, you just choose an OER textbook, right? So that's my 2 cents.
So
Well, thank
Matthew,
you. Yeah, go ahead,
I was
Teresa.
going to say, Monica led us right to this next question, and I was just about like the why. And when you mentioned social justice, I think Michael, we all like started throwing hearts into our Zoom backgrounds. And I just got this rush because that is exactly why I wanted to get involved. And then when I went to Rhode Island last fall, I was like literally lit on fire when I saw all of the things that were happening around the country. And then I came back and like started talking about it. And so now we have like a committee of like 15, 20 people who meet to discuss OER on our campus, right? And I'm just like, wow, all this just started because people are like, we want this. And the more people that get to the table, so we have our textbook people, the writing people, the librarians. We just had a LibGuide created. I mean, and Cheryl Casey, a lot of people know her, but she is on our committee as well. And she's kind of like spirit, kind of giving us a lot of support on how to, because you're kind of like, when you start this, you're kind of like guiding like a huge ship in like a lake. And so there's so much you want to do, but then it's like, wait a minute, we need some guidance. We need more water, like resource. We need more support underneath us, right? And so I think that the motivation for many of us, and when Monica said she was going to create it regardless, that's how a lot of us feel. Like this is like so far beyond my everyday task. And the department chair was actually in this meeting a few minutes ago, but And she'll tell you that Teresa has like a list of things this long, and OER is nowhere on that list, right, of my responsibilities. But it is such an important piece that I have managed to figure out how to weave it into everything I do. And that's really the creative way of approaching this on your campus and getting people's buy-in is showing them how it can make their life easier, showing them how, like Alexander said, once he actually got it done, it's like his, yes, Monica, exactly. It becomes his baby. He can update it when he wants to, he can add to it, he can, it becomes yours, and you don't have to ask permission from a publisher to update, or you don't have to go and say, you're missing this nuanced approach to this argument. You can actually just put it in there, Monica. You can actually add the history, the breadth of the history that you want to include, not the funneled version that a lot of people want us to have. So yes, that is why I do it, and why I have just been just motivated to bring it to as many courses as we can at University of Arizona Global.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. When we are asking our students to look for credibility, we're not asking them to look for like how snazzy is the design. We're asking them to look at the institution and the person, and we that's us. So being able to have access to press books, for example, we get to create a work of OER with our institution is connected to it, and our name is connected to it. And so it's sometimes it's weird to use your own OER for your own students. But my experience is that it doesn't take, they've already signed up for class, so it doesn't take that much to get some credibility there. But then we've got a whole ecosystem of remix and remaster and an attribution ecosystem. So within our work, we're attributing, where did we learn that? Where did it come from? And we're for all intents and purposes, in the same space as academic papers, but we also are thinking about, how do I make this engaging for students? How do I make this a learning material? We're have a little more buy-in to I want somebody to do something with this element. But that being said, I think it's also kind of an answer to the question of how do I find them? And to my mind, there's sort of a lot of people wonder about like, how do I find good OER that's credible? Because credible does matter more than how it looks. I think Pressbooks is helping a little bit on the making it look nice part. But to my mind, the BC, the British Columbia University database, is very good. And then the University of Minnesota has an online textbook library that is also very good. And so anything you search, that's actually my go-to. That's my number one. So anything you find that's made that database has been peer-reviewed by the University of Minnesota Library, has met their standards, and they won't put it in there if it hasn't. So it's a little different than OER Commons, where it's the Wild West, and you could get stuff that's credible and stuff that's less credible. We're starting to build up a peer review system, but I think more word needs to get out as to like where to find the databases that hold the highest quality stuff. I also think Merlot is good, and at very least has enough metrics for your searches that you can weed out what's better. But nothing gets into University of Minnesota's online library that hasn't been peer reviewed by their library system. So also, by the way, creators, go put your books in there, because that's where the good stuff is.
I'm not sure if anyone else on the panel would like to address the question. I didn't really articulate it because we just rolled right into it, because it segued so naturally. But the question that we're addressing is, beyond the cost savings, why is it that we find open education to be so important? And we've already heard access to information and representing your students and the ability to customize materials, especially when you see that, if a publisher textbook is, teaching students a foreign language, but it doesn't actually do a good job of explaining what the differences between the different parts of speech are, then that's like, okay, well, now I've got to take that upon myself to find something and, slip it in there or develop something. So, yeah, any other thoughts about what it is? Why is open education important beyond cost savings?
I'd like to build on the question of representing students. We all know that the textbook markets are largely dominated by California and Texas. And because of all kinds of political things that I'm not going to get into, oftentimes they tend to play things safe, which means, for example, my first year French textbooks don't have non-binary pronouns. They don't represent diverse family types. They don't even have very much racial and ethnic diversity, which is kind of appalling considering that the continent with the most French speakers in the world is Africa. And the only textbooks always have the word for church. The only textbook I've ever used that included the words for mosque and synagogue were an OER. And so we are able to be a little more radical if we're not dealing with publishers who are afraid of pissing off students who will be offended by the representation of a same-sex couple or an interracial couple or a non-binary kid. And students really do learn better when they feel like they're being included.
Yeah, that's a powerful point. I don't think I'm adding anything to that. I just am chiming in to say I really resonated with that.
I think, Michael, that's exactly, we're open access institution, right? And so I have students, and I teach the entry point course. So I have students who instantaneously feel that they don't belong, right? Like they just don't belong. They've been told they don't belong. And I'm always so excited when I see the turnaround. I teach the Gen 101 course, but I also teach some other courses because I want to see where they're going. So I teach a reading course, and I teach a sociology course, and I usually see my students at some point. I may see them later. And it's always nice to see their confidence increase. And one of the ways we do that in our entry point course is we try to tell stories. We try to use resources that reflect their stories, right? So say, for instance, you are someone in recovery who is coming back into understanding yourself. When we do the SWOT analysis in that course, students often tell us that's the first time they have an opportunity to think about their lives. And we're talking older students, people who are 30s, 40s, 50s. I even have had 60, almost 70-year-old students. I think my oldest was 69. And so a lot of things in our textbooks don't reflect those stories. They don't tell the story of them, of overcoming. There's this kind of understanding that there's a traditional path. And I look for ways to show my students that what they're experiencing adds to my class. Like, so I always make sure I tell them that in my chat, my private emails to them, like, please talk whatever you're comfortable sharing, because that's the richness that we're looking for in our discussions. And so it's nothing for you to be ashamed of. And so when I hear someone who's in recovery talk about how they are using some of these skills to help young people in their community, we applaud them for that, right? Because that is a skill that a lot of us don't have. But couple that skill with education and it's powerful. And that's what I really try to explain to them is the paper ceiling of a degree is just that, right? And you're going to bust through that but you're going to bust through it with all of this richness that you bring, like of your story. So, what does that look like in my materials? It looks like telling their story. It looks like breaking things down, like Michael was saying. I have to explain what a noun and a verb is. And you may think that that's like funny, but you know what? A lot of our students have had really poor K-12 education, and they have been struggling with different issues during that K-12 education, which has led them to where they are right now. So why can't we do a little refresher? Like, why is that seen as negative, right? So adding those kinds of remediation, that review in your textbook and kind of breaking definitions down, that's what our students need, and that's what I'm going to try to give them. And so, like I said, our materials right now are purely supplemental, ancillary. They're meant to help break concepts down for our students. And I can't wait till we have the time to spend creating the textbook that we want, that says exactly. And we're reviewing the textbook now, and we've asked for more OER, and it's really good. And we're making sure that it does that. We're making sure that we're writing our own case studies so that we can make sure that the stories are told. But that's why it's so important, because our students are not traditional students, but their story needs to be told. And that's my goal, is to tell it.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
love that. I love the idea of seeing more representation in materials. Um, the the cosmopolitanism that comes from a college experience often comes from showing up and meeting people who are different than you. And so there might be people who experience college that don't show up the way that a traditional college student would, and maybe don't have access to that because the materials they're interacting with are coming from a white, rich perspective. So if we could enrich those materials, we could be able to spread one of the important benefits of college to more college learners.
Yeah, I think that also unlearning is just as important as learning when it comes to a college education. And when we're looking at history, trying to break people from the habit of saying Christopher Columbus discovered America, and this looking at maps that show the colonizers and then terra incognito, when you have millions of people living in these unknown areas, and kind of trying to also incorporate local history so that it's relevant to our students, because you can learn about colonial America and it feels like it's only happening in New England and the Chesapeake, and our students, I think, are sometimes like, well, what does this have to do with me? So being able to just broaden their horizons, have more representation, and get, also, if finding out what do the students want to learn about, and then we can customize, our classes based on that. And I think OER plays a big role in that. And even if you don't have like a cohesive, like, textbook that you're working with, you know, having a variety of resources at your fingertips that you can incorporate as you see a class developing and as you're responding to gaps in learning, or issues with unlearning things, then I think OER plays a tremendous role in that. And I think, for me, in teaching social problems, race and ethnic relations, teaching, the history of the United States, world history. I mean, world history for a long time was just Western Civ plus. And so for me, it was like important to draw the focus away from Europe and into the Americas and Africa, because it seemed like there was just these focuses on East Asia and Europe, and nothing about the Pacific. And so so having that freedom and the ability to expose students to just a plethora of different ideas and places has been really important for my OER journey.
I think what Monica just said is dovetails to something that actually is not one of our topics that we were going to talk about. However, in the climate that we're in right now, I hope Matthew, jump in if you need to, but in the climate that we're in right now, it's so important to have an opportunity, a space where we can tell the truth and to spread the information more completely. And so I think that academic freedom is a place where lives with OER, and it's going to be important going forward as we try to tell the stories completely. And this is going to be a space that I think will be safe for people to do that.
Well, considering that we have only about 14 minutes left before the session ends, we probably want about 5 minutes maybe dedicated just in case there are Q&A or something. But we certainly have many other topics that we could transition into. But the other question that I think we did want to try to cover, and this goes along with a lot of what we were just talking about with respect to making the content more engaging for students, because you're making it having it customized so that it's relevant to local things, relevant to diverse cultural backgrounds, representing the experiences and backgrounds of the students. But what other ways in which do you think faculty can, in developing OER or even just adapting it in a way that fits their needs, how can faculty make those materials more engaging for students? And then maybe even thinking about ways in which we can try to make them appealing enough that they can compete with some of these publisher materials that sometimes have a lot of bells and whistles, even if they don't do anything but make noise. But anyway, well, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead and just jump in.
So I think we let me, how do I start this? I paid for everything so you don't have to. So I bought every possible premium, every possible program, just looking for what could other teachers use to make their thing look nicer. What kind of templates could we create to make it easier for teachers to jump in and do this easily? One thing I've discovered is there are communities out there who care about the same thing. One of them is Pixabay. It's photographers all over the world. They take photos, they upload them, and you get the high-res images for free. And sort of the catch is, I mean, people are asking for attributions. We love that anyway. We love to give attributions. But the other piece of that puzzle is, the idea is if you upload a couple of photos, maybe special things in your region. I took some photos of some desert blossoms, some barrel cactus blossoms, put them in there. And then it feels like, well, now other people are also having access to some images of high quality of stuff. Anyway, a little bit of what I'm getting at here is that Canva, which is a really nice go-to tool that's pretty easy to use, and you're going to have to spend some time working with it and figuring out how the different things work, but it is free. It's freemium, and they want you to lock away all their good images so that you pay for them. And I discovered that you can actually connect Pixabay to Canva. So within Canva, instead of just searching for images, you can actually go over to the Applications tab, and there's a Pixabay app that you can link up. And so now you have access to high quality free images that can be dragged and dropped into your workspace. So I do think things like that are like just sort of those, somebody's got to go wade into those waters and try it. And learn what they need, but also that's partially gonna be you, because you kind of have an image in your head of what you kind of want it to look like, And so you're going to have to play around with a database of good quality images and get them in there. Another thing I think that students would help a lot would be elements that they get some instant feedback on. So H5P has become a big deal in our what am I trying? Oh, in our D2L workspaces. It also works in H5P also works in Pressbooks. So for those of you who haven't heard of it, H5P is a system that leverages JavaScript to make your stuff interactive. So if you had a quiz and all the answers were at the bottom, you could very, very easily and quickly change that to a quiz where they click on an answer and it immediately tells them that was the wrong answer and here's why. And it looks nice. So those are, I could go on all day, but those are two big ones that I've discovered that I really like. And then also just to sweeten the pot, I'll find some free templates that I have made and put them in the chat so that y'all can have access to some templates to play around with. What else are you guys using to make it to make it look nice?
We use Canva. We use Canva a lot for our info. Yeah, but I didn't realize that Canva was connected to Pixabay now. So I just sent a text to the team that I'm working. I'm like, guys, wait, we can. And I love the idea of contributing to Pixabay. That's not something I had thought about either. And so Michael made a good point. Another form of community building and mutual support. It's also a way that you can flood what the images that you want to see, right? And so you can be the messenger in that respect. But we use Canva and like I said, we're just new to this. So we did a lot of vodcasts and podcasts. So we did podcasts, we did infographics and just articles, and we actually housed ours. We did, we licensed it, but we housed it actually on a public facing page that is for students, and made it accessible that way. We haven't housed it anyplace else. We actually just, created it. Another thing that we've done is we have created for our teaching and learning conference. I'm the co-editor of the conference proceedings, which are peer reviewed. And so we're using Janeway to publish those through the UA library system. So when you start talking about elevating, like Alexander mentioned, there's a lot out there. You want to make sure that things are peer reviewed. Finding places to do that and to provide that service is really important, but they may be closer than you think, right? Like you may just have to ask the right person in the library system, and they may find like, wait a minute, we can do this for you. We can, create. So, that was just something that we started doing. And it'll be published in the spring sometime. So I think that for us, it's just been kind of a catch as catch can. We've been exploring and figuring it out and learning, lots of learning about where we can do it.
So I think that this is all great, and thank you for all the tips and sharing, especially Alexander sharing your templates and all the different kind of websites and things. There's another website called Unsplash, which also provides a lot of free photos. And there's also a website for people of color, photos of people of color called nappy.com. And that's another one that you can use. There's free photos there that you can use as well. One thing that I would say about this question is, making the materials more engaging, competitive publisher materials. Are there ways other than just the visual design that you do that? Maybe in approaching the actual, I'm not sure, maybe we've already answered this question, but I think that we might have had more than just the graphic design portion. I know, Alexander, you did mention H5P, and that's something that I always like to bring up too, because whether you are, we use it through Pressbooks, but you can, it depends because it is its own separate open source platform, although it got bought recently, but by D2L, I think. Uh, But anyway, but that's a way that you can actually create open source interactives, like not just like simple question and answer, but you can develop entire like branching scenarios, like choose your own adventure experiences for your students. And trust me, if you're a creative person, that is a rabbit hole that you probably want to avoid because that can get pretty deep pretty quickly. So yeah, any other thoughts about making materials more engaging and competitive?
I mean, what are they doing in the best pay for textbooks? That's so great. All I can think of is one-stop shop type stuff where they're like, we've got all the tests and all the practices and but even Pearson is like their e-text is infuriating to use. You can't copy anything. It's searchable but not searchable. It's often not that pretty anyway. Um, and yeah, I'm wondering like what are the paywall things doing that what's the rabbit we're chasing?
One of the big things that I found in my field is that the publishers are able to afford to pay for the copyrights for contemporary authentic texts in the language, which is one of the biggest challenges I have because under our new general studies program, our language classes do have to include authentic texts. And I'm a 19th century specialist, so I can go back and get stuff from before the current copyright limits, but um, the bells and whistles, the video clips, the short texts, and the fact of the matter is the modern stuff tends to be more inclusive. But I'm still not convinced that that is enough to justify asking the students to pay $180 for a book.
Yeah, you're so right about modern text though. And the 1929 is too far back for a lot of my GED seeking students. And so I'll find myself paying for a book and then finding creative ways to get them access to it. Like while I have it open, we'll read it together, that kind of thing. But certainly we don't have the budget every single 8 weeks to buy a new book. That's such a good answer.
I really feel as the moderator on the panel, I'm reluctant to do this, but I really feel like I have to jump in because I teach English composition and I teach literature courses as well. And I am a huge advocate, passionate about open education. But every single time I teach a literature course, I have to like really, really figure out like how do I get my students access to contemporary writing because of the fact that, if I want them to, yeah, I can have them read 19th century plays or 19th century poetry, and that would be that. Or now maybe like The Sound and the Fury if I wanted to. But that doesn't serve my students well, So I have to figure like, okay, well, what is it that I can do to get them access to, creatively get them access to more contemporary fiction or whatever through websites that happen to have them up legally. Okay, so like for example, occasionally you'll be able to find Harper's or the New Yorker or some other magazine will actually have something up online that is that you can give your students access to without a paywall. But then the OER content really is all the stuff that it's packed around it. So all of the literary concepts and the explanations of how to explicate poetry and all those other kinds of things that I'm still working on creating the OER and developing the OER for. And then it's a matter of leaving gaps in the OER so that what it is it's like, here are all the tools that you need to do the analysis or whatever. And then there's a gap for whoever the end user is going to be. You insert your primary source here that you like. And I honestly think that as faculty, if you're teaching in a discipline where you're facing this kind of an issue, you should not feel bad about if you feel it's right, you should not feel bad about asking your students to purchase an old copy of a novel for $4 on Amazon. You know what I mean? Like you can get all kinds of low cost options to serve that one unique purpose without having to say, okay, well, I give up. I'm just going to have to use a textbook. So anyway, I just felt like I had to chime in with that because I just had that experience developing 2 literature courses last in the fall.
Oh yeah, and I can see your frustration. It blows my mind that a thing that is infinitely reduplicable could be somehow locked away behind a paywall. Um, and I understand that creators should be paid for creative works, and I also, and it's a tricky situation because we also need like students to have access to good stuff or they're not going to dig in.
Well, I hate to break it up today, but it is 11:50 and one of my jobs is to end on time. So I want to thank all of our panelists one more time, Monica, Michael, Teresa, and Alex. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. If I didn't know you before we got together for this panel, then I am happy to have met you, and I look forward to hopefully chatting again sometime and working together in the future. And thank you to all of the attendees. I hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference and have a wonderful day. All right, thanks again, guys. I'll see you around.
Take care.
Yeah, take care.